Distant Vistas by Sven Pertelson. Part 1. I looked around for somewhere to sit. It was time to check the reserves in my environment suit, and while the ground was green, it most decidedly was not grass. The texture and colour was like astroturf, but the way it sucked at my feet and the incessant movement of the club-ended tendrils made me loath to sit on it. The mottled rocks seemed a safer bet. Tapped at the nearest one with my geologist's hammer. It was hard, and a small chip of rock flew off and landed on the not grass. The not grass seized it and carried the chip away with the peristaltic movement. The rock it was going to be then. Despite the millions of pounds spent on my suit, the boots were not a great fit, and I suspected that I was getting blisters. My feet needed a rest. As I rested, I hit the rock again, and this time grabbed the rock chip before it fell to the floor. Photographed, bagged, tagged, and recorded it. Above me, the clouds moved in the strawberry ripple sky, and a translucent bubble organism drifted in the slight breeze. It was hard to judge distance or size with no recognizable features in the landscape. I made a note in my vocal log to ask for an optical rangefinder to be part of the standard kit in future. They're going to have fun with that log back at Mission HQ. Some of my language about the boots had been colourful, to say the least, and the log itself did not allow editing. Below me, in the valley, the water in the lake moved in oily waves. The low gravity made them look taller than you'd expect. Nearer the waterline there were patches of dark green. Back on Earth I would have bet they would have been mossy swamp, but here all bets were off. I'd give those areas a wide berth until I had time to explore other areas. All my checks done, and cursing the boots, I moved down towards the waterline, skirting round the dark green patches. The lake lapped lazily up the shore, and a thick film of iridescent slime moved up and down with the water coating the rocks and the shore. Time for more samples. Liquid samples were going to be tricky. The sample containers I had been supplied with were multi-layered, supposedly proof against acids, alkalis, solvents, fungi, bacteria, and anything else we'd been able to think of. That made them thick and heavy, and really hard to get a sample into. The sampling probe had disposable nozzles, but these had to be bagged and sealed into multi-layered self-seal bags. We were not allowed to leave anything foreign on the surface. It still gave me an uneasy feeling whenever I put one of the sample containers in my backpack. What if whatever I had sampled ate through the container? The slime almost crawled its own way into the sample nozzle, and was headed up towards the rest of the probe. I hit the eject button over the sample container, and nozzle and sample went in together. I would get grief over that. I clapped the lid on the container sharpish and watched the slime moving round the container. It looked as if it was trying to get out. Took a step back from the water's edge. If this stuff was that mobile, I did not want it near my much-hated boots. I decided to double bag the sample container. I didn't know what things getting out and moving round in my backpack. There was one small area free of the slime by the water's edge, and I moved towards it to get a water sample. From above me one of the translucent balloon organisms descended, heading for the same spot. I stopped and watched it land, just in the water away from the slime. I now had a better idea of the thing's size. This one was like a large beach ball. I could see some internal structure, and I activated my helmet camera for a video record. I was glad I did. As it touched the water, there was a sudden movement from beneath the surface. I got an impression of long, needle-like teeth, and suddenly there was a hole in the balloon, and it sank onto the surface. The water looked as if it was boiling, and in seconds there was nothing left. As I played back the video, I could see what those piranha analogues looked like. Not fish, flat discs with a central circular opening lined with blue, needle-like teeth. Each disc only took one bite and sank beneath the surface. This place was going to be interesting, and I was going to have to keep my wits about me. End of part 1. Distant Vistas, Part 2, by Sven Pertelson. In the corner of my vision I saw 2 notifications pop up, a couple of reminders. It was local solar noon and I should take sustenance soon, and a reminder that it was time to contact my mobile support vehicle and instruct it as to where I wanted it to meet me before nightfall. I'd get the tedious duty over first, lunch. What delights would the life support system deliver for lunch today? A nice jacket potato with melting mature cheese? A salad niçoise? No. It would be a fully balanced, nutritionally tailored, low residue, easily digested, chemical tasting smooth goo that I could sip as I explored. Would it be too much to ask for a flavour that even approximated to something edible? A vague suggestion of a texture? The occasional lump? Whatever happened to freeze-dried vanilla ice cream that NASA perfected, or even the caviar paste the Russians used to get? Shh, progress. Lunch over, and thankfully quickly forgotten, I pulled up my comms tablet and started looking at the course the MSV would follow. It was true that the limited AI on the MSV should be able to negotiate most obstacles and just follow me. However, that I in AI was not a particularly high one. The public seemed to think of it as some sort of robotic dog, a Fido faithfully following his master's path. The truth was this AI was closer to the brain of an ant following a scent trail. Unless I told it otherwise, it would follow all the blind trails and backtracks I'd taken. If I wanted it to be somewhere convenient before nightfall, I'd have to edit the track. I'd also tell it to stop off at the spring I'd found and top up its water tanks. The MSV would meet me before it got dark. I could plug in my suit to get it recharged from the MSV's batteries, which had been storing energy from the solar cells covering the vehicle's tortoise-like body. Once my suit was plugged in, I could get out of these boots and take care of my poor feet. Until then, I'd carry on exploring. The terrain ahead looked simpler than that I'd been picking my way through. The green knot grass was smoother, and there were fewer rocks and less of the dark green patches. I would take a look at one of the smaller patches before I left, though. Found a small patch adjacent to a rock. Then I could climb over the rock and get close without too much risk. I lay down on the edge of the rock and looking down the vivid green patch. Like the knot grass, the knot moss was in constant movement. Undulating waves crossed its surface, but there was no breeze here. Recalling what had happened to the rock chip on the knot grass, I used my hammer to flake off some pieces of the rock I lay on. As I hit the rock, I noticed the knot moss's undulations become more pronounced. This organism was sensitive to vibration. I tossed a rock chip onto the surface. Instantly ripples appeared on the surface, but these were not like ripples in a pond. They were going the wrong way, not away from the chip, but towards it. In the central hollow, the rock vanished below the surface and the ripples died away. Seconds later, there was another upheaval and the rock chip flew up and out of the knot moss and landed on the knot grass, which then carried it away. Well, I knew not to step on the knot moss. I might not be as unappetizing to it as the rock. Moving on, I could see that above me the knot grass gave way to a lighter green-yellow vegetation that seemed to cover the more distant hills. That was too far to explore today. I decided to make my way down to the water again to see if I could get a sample of that. By the water's edge, I could see that there was none of the oily yellow slime here, and the water was clear and shallow. There were some balloon organisms floating just above the water. I watched as they touched down. There did not seem to be any of the piranha-like creatures here. The balloons landed safely, and as they came into contact with the water, they started to change colour. From a white translucent sphere they became at first dark blue. The balloons swelled and the blue became lighter. Then they grew rapidly from beach ball size to undulating soap bubble-like shapes as large as hot air balloons, and rose rapidly from the surface to disappear into the pink clouds above. I watched them vanish, and then went down to the water and took a sample. Further along the shore was a tree-shaped structure. After what I'd seen already, I did not delude myself that it was a tree or would behave like a tree. It was, however, a useful landmark and would mark a spot where I could continue exploring tomorrow. I headed up the slope away from the water where I could see the MSV just arriving. Time to get out of the suit, pamper my feet, and get some rest. End of part 2.